So you're talking about caregiver as a role and then educator as a role, and how a perspective of our role in the school, they look at us as a caregiver or as an educator. Get it?
Okay. Split where?
Is she okay? She fell down.
Hit where? Hit where?
You want to go take a look first?
Hit where? On the floor.
On the wall.
Can I see her mouth?
But it's not recording here.
Okay.
Ah.
I can hear you.
Hey.
Say
She
hi.
cannot hear you. I remember.
Do you want to come down? At times I do feel that routine is taking up a lot of time when it comes to curriculum, because bulk of the time that they spend in school is actually on routine. You were in Singapore also, so you felt the difference.
Yeah, I feel a huge difference lah. Like I think a lot of, in a lot of ways, I have a deeper relationship with my kids in Singapore because there's so much more interaction in terms of, like, when you're doing routine, when you're doing all of this, the interaction is very different from when you are actually teaching, right? Like it's almost a very alternative way of connecting with children,
It makes a difference on how people actually see us.
as in I feel is but I don't know, you see, I want to say it makes a difference and that I get more respect here as a teacher. Like, parents do come to me and say, can you please help me with this situation, I need your advice, and they still come to me with the lens of, like, more about child development than I do because this is your specialty, but I don't know if it's because of culture as well. If it's because of how the community in general view teachers in Singapore and the community here and how they view teachers in the Middle East. So, like, to me, it's like, of course, there's a huge difference in the way that we are viewed because of the caregiving aspect of the job. But at the same time, I think it's a multifaceted issue.
I think when we bring up this issue, it's not like we want to totally abolish our role as caregivers.
Caregivers,
Because I think
100%.
we definitely realize that it is very important in young
100%. Yes.
education.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it is also probably, I actually highly suspect that it affects how others also view us.
100%. Completely, right? Like, we're not viewed as proper teachers because we take care of the kids.
Because we do all those things.
Yeah, because we do all the things.
If I speak from a perspective, right? Because in Singapore, I am not supposedly, right, males aren't so welcome in doing caregiving role.
Mm-hmm.
And then ironically, and then I told Belinda this before, that it's precisely because I'm not allowed by certain institutions to take on a caregiving role, actually feel kind of like half a teacher. I don't know, maybe influenced from Australia's culture, I guess. Education and caregiving, in some centers at least, is not seen as separate things. So, as comparatively, yes, in Singapore. So I think what I'm trying to say, the question sounds like, why does locally in Singapore, caregiving is not viewed as part of education, but in other countries, or at least some schools in Australia, caregiving is seen as part of the education. Hence, the caregiving part, right, doesn't seem so like we're babysitters lah. I think one of the main differences, right, of why at least the schools that I went to in Australia, they don't see it differently, is because they don't conduct lessons the way we do. To us, lessons are defined by group times, right? When everyone gather in front of the whiteboard or whatever kind of a system we have, and then we teach. But in Australia, it's not like that. Australia learning is defined by there's this term called lived experiences. So the idea that children, they have their daily life, right? They go through all kinds of experiences, and then they learn from these experiences. So the role of the teacher becomes, how do you set up these experiences for the children?
So it's like they're having their own like life stimulation in school.
You can say that. And
Something
if you
like
talk
that.
about that, right, independence, caregiving, teen is part of those experiences.
So that is part of the experiences, and that is why it seems like it's part of the whole package.
Correct. That is what I feel. At least.
I
Okay,
think
yeah, I can't
I think in a lot of countries with a very Western approach to education, and we're talking about countries like Australia, we're talking about countries like the US, we're talking about countries like the UK. The reason why an educator is viewed as an educator, no matter how much caregiving she does, is because of how much respect the culture has towards education, right? I think it comes very deep rooted into the idea of how that is represented, how much is education valued, and who like when we talk about ranking people in terms of how important people are, like in Singapore, like no one talks about how important it is for you to be a teacher. Like you don't hear parents saying like, oh, when you grow up you can be a teacher. It's always like a doctor, a lawyer, or like I think it's just, I think there's a lot to do with how we are socially constructed as a community, and with that being said, I'm not saying that this is obviously an identity that blankets all Singaporeans. I think even within the Singaporean community, like the Malay community see education or see teachers very differently from how the Chinese community would see it, and we're also talking about different kinds of like income status, right? Income levels, or like we're talking about and there's also like a group of people who are also within our preschools, like they're expatriates. So they bring in their own, their own culture and their own values into how they treat us as educators. But if we were to look at Singapore, and we're talking about Singaporeans as a group, as a group of people, and if we were to make a blanket statement as to whether or not we are valued as educators, right? Unlike countries like Australia and New Zealand and the UK and the US, we value higher education. There's no emphasis. I think in more recent years, with more advocacy from the government, I think it has improved a little bit, maybe perhaps from a younger group of parents. They're starting to see the importance of the first 7 years of a child's life. So they're starting to see the importance of early years or early childhood education or whatever. But as a community and as a society, we're always hearing about, like, which, like, people will never ask which preschool did you go to, which they ask which university you go to, right? Like, you're not gonna ask someone like, hey, which preschool you go to, you go PAP, oh, you go private school, like you know what I mean? Like, they don't ask that, man. Like, the first question they ask, like, oh, which university you go to? You go NUS. Wow, you're so clever. It's kind of things, So the value is in higher education, and I'm talking even primary school. Like when my friend says like, oh, I'm a primary school teacher. Oh, you're primary school only. Why you don't want to teach secondary school? Like, there's always something, Like, but like if you're a secondary school teacher and up, there's a certain level of respect for you.
Yeah.
It all depends on the community and the society, right? And I think that's exactly what we struggle with, and that's why until today we cannot see that caregiving and education come hand in hand. Yeah.
Like, you're talking about how like if people see caregiving and education as separate things, do they see themselves as at home, right? That the children are never learning if they're at home. Because the only thing that is happening is caregiving. There are some people who have this image of children that they want them to achieve. Kind of like this, they should be able to do this, by this age they should have to be able to do this. They're not looking at them as individuals, as themselves, but they are perceiving them with this image. And then to them, when they look at this child, they see, oh, this child is not able to sit down yet. this child is not able
So it's the
to.
image of a child, right? It's the kind of like what is your image of a child, you know? But that's
That image has a lot to do with how our societies run, of course.
no, 100%. But also, I think the image that you have of a child, on top of the fact that it's how our society is run, it's how you're trained as a teacher, right? Because before that,
Yeah.
before you're even trained as a teacher, I don't even think you really think about children. You know what I mean? It's how, like, we were children ourselves, right? Before we become adults and we become trained as teachers. But we're talking about 18-year-olds going into university, being trained as NIE teachers. We are going into poly, we're going into a university, and we're being trained as teachers. And the way that we are being trained is very different from how our NIE teachers are being trained. And I'm not saying like one is better than the other. I'm not saying that, but there is no cohesion in terms of how early childhood educators are trained and how primary school teachers are trained. And they don't understand that the transition is it should be seamless. It should be seamless.
I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because the idea of the image, how we form images is from social stimuli, right? Social stimuli, social interaction. I mean, interestingly, in Australia, in order to be a primary school teacher, right? When you go through your training is from birth to 12. Going back to the image thing that I was trying to say, was that they have this different image because they know how children works. They know the progression. They know what it is like when the children were caught in the so-called in between milestones. So that when they are 7 and are in primary 1 or grade 1, they know what is, they don't have this fixed image where they say, oh, the child must be able to do this already. Why the child cannot sit down? Why the child cannot? To them, it's more like, oh, the child's not ready to sit down yet. I'm going to find a way to help the child to sit.
Preschools and childcare centers were set up because there was a need, right? Like it all had to do with industrialization, right? Like the economy needed to grow, people needed to go out and work, they needed mothers to go out and work. So find other people to look after your kids, you know? So and it's one of those things where like it's ingrained, right? It's ingrained in the society where like, I cannot take care of my own kids because I need to go out and work. So these people are paid to do the job for me.
I guess moving on, like right now from the present, the good thing is it sounds like we already have solutions because we're talking about countries like Australia where their university program is from birth to 12. Ours is not quite there yet. How in certain places they do view caregiving and education as one package, and then right now to us, certain people, certain groups do not see it that way. Hence, we have that gap in caregiving versus education. It's not that we want to do showering or that is dirty, but that we're simply providing the children what they need, and as one of the adults around them, that is just what we do.